This video is brought to you by HockeyMonkey.com, your one-stop shop for the best prices on all the latest and greatest hockey gear. Be sure to use coupon code HR4U7 at checkout to receive 7% off any order.
Hey guys, Josh from HockeyReviewsForYou.com, bringing you my first impressions plus general tech overview of the CCM RBZ hockey skates. These are the top-end skates currently on offer from CCM. They have a retail price of $750 US, and honestly have quite a few unique features that I'm going to talk about in today's video. I thought it would be more informative to actually make this video after having worn the skate a couple of times, just to get a better feel for it, because it's very difficult to judge this type of product without actually having worn it yourself. So keep in mind that I have about, I want to say 12 to 14 hours on this particular pair of skates. Pretty good idea as to how they perform. And as far as modifications go, they've been sharpened twice. I've changed the laces to wax laces just because that's my preference. And of course the skates have been heat molded. So with that being said, let's get right into the video. First things first, let's talk about the boot itself. Now from a visual standpoint, I really like the look of the CCM RBZ. It's a relatively simple design. You're going to have a little bit of shine from the black area on the boot itself just because of the finish they have on here. And as you can tell, this is the limited edition white colorway of the RBZ, which personally I prefer the look of. It's a little bit more flashy. It has that white outline, as you can tell, and the white is extremely bright in person, much more than I've seen on any other pair of skates, simply because it isn't a leather material. It's actually more of like a shiny plastic type of material, so it really reflects the light, and like I said, turns up much brighter than any other white skate that I've personally ever laid eyes on. Of course, if you want something a little bit more low-key, you can go for the standard color of the CCM RBZs, which is pretty much all black, with your small red accents and the CCM branding around the skate. Now, as far as the construction of the boot itself goes, you're going to find that this outer layer, which is what gives it this nice shine, is the Action Form composite material from CCM. Basically, this is what's going to help to add to that lateral stiffness to the boot. It's also going to provide that protection. It's the outer shell for the boot itself, and it is very, very rigid. Because of the finish on here as well, I found that it doesn't really scratch all that easily. So for that reason, durability-wise, it's going to keep its aesthetic a lot longer, and it's not going to look worn or beat up after several months of use. So again, if you're looking for something that's going to more or less look new for longer, I think that this material that they use on the outer shell of the boot will definitely hold up very, very well. Now it is a sandwich-like construction for the boot itself, and the inner is CCM's Speed Core inner. Basically, this is what gives the boot its structural integrity, its stiffness, the amount of forward flex that it's going to offer, and apparently the CCM RBZ is 24% stiffer than the previous top-end CCM skate, according to them anyways. I didn't find this skate honestly to be particularly stiff as far as high-end skates go, but it did feel very good. There's plenty of lateral stiffness, just as you would expect from a high-end pair of hockey skates, and for the most part I don't really have anything to complain about regarding the construction of the boot itself. Now as far as the actual fit of the boot, this is a very high volume type of skate, meaning that there's a lot of extra space pretty much throughout the entire boot itself. But with that being said, once you get these heat molded, it changes absolutely everything. And I would say that it's such an important thing with this skate that you absolutely have to get them heat molded. If you don't, you're not going to get the correct type of fit, and you're not going to get the correct feel out of this particular skate. Now, you're going to notice that the foam on the inside is incredibly thick, and if you've ever seen these brand new on the shelf in store, you're going to notice that the boot itself is very open, and you can see that now the laces have kind of closed in, and that's just after a simple heat molding. It really does change the overall fit of the boot itself. If you've tried them on off the shelf and they felt absolutely terrible, that's normal. Heat mold them, and trust me, it changes absolutely everything. But nonetheless, there is a lot of kind of extra height to the boot itself in the forefoot area, whereas the toe box is a little bit lower, more of a medium width in the forefoot and toe in my opinion. But for the most part, high volume fit, and because of the heat mold process that they have with this particular skate, it truly does wrap your foot, and because there's so much thick foam on the inside, which we'll get into later, it's pretty much suitable for all foot types. You're going to get a nice comfortable feel. Didn't have issues with heel slippage, didn't really have any issues with discomfort either. It's one of very few skates that I got heat molded, went on the ice, and had next to no issues whatsoever with any kind of foot cramping or just discomfort in general. So very comfortable boot, great fit. Just keep in mind that it is a little bit higher volume, so if you want something that's going to fit a little closer to your foot, this may not be the best option for you. Next, I want to talk about the tongue of the RBZs. Now, as you can see, it's lined in a felt material, giving it a more traditional feel against your foot, but the felt itself is simply a liner. It's very, very thin. The majority of the tongue's bulk and rigidity is provided by the injected foam, and the foam itself is kind of more of a medium density foam. It's completely exposed. You have an extra strip of nylon running through the middle there, just to help to add some rigidity to the tongue, as well as help to cut down on any kind of lace bite. But for the most part, I didn't really have too many issues with the tongue. Honestly, the first time I put them on, I tied them up. I had some very minor lace bite for the first 15-20 minutes of wearing the skates, but that went away soon enough, and I haven't had any issues with discomfort since then. With that being said, the tongue is on the thinner side for my liking, and the foam is a lot spongier than I was honestly expecting or would expect from a high-end pair of hockey skates. It's honestly not my favorite feature of the RBZ, but I can't complain about it too much. Protection, I guess, would be a slight concern just because of the lack of plastic in the tongue itself, and it is, like I said, very thin and has that spongy feel about it. I would also worry about it breaking down several months down the line, but again, I haven't had really too many issues with it, and tongues on hockey skates are fairly modular, and it's a pretty inexpensive fix if you just really hate the tongue or it breaks down on you. So again, not the highlight of the skate by any means, but not necessarily a bad aspect of the skate either. Next, I want to talk about the liner. Now, as you guys can see, it's a Clarino liner backed by a very high density memory foam material. It's a good thickness as well, thicker than I've worn on any other skate, which makes for an incredibly comfortable feel. And also, again, I have to stress that getting these skates heat molded is absolutely crucial to getting a proper fit out of the RBZs. From right out of the box, honestly, they don't feel good at all. But once you put them in the oven and you tie them up, it makes a huge difference in terms of how the skate wraps your foot, how that foam contours to pretty much every curve of your ankle, and it truly does have a nice lockdown, extremely comfortable feel. If I had one complaint regarding the liner itself, is that it is so thick to the point where it does feel ever so slightly bulky, but like I said, the comfort is better than I've experienced on any other pair of skates. So again, if comfort is your main concern, then you're definitely going to enjoy wearing the CCM RBZs. As far as insoles go, there's a surprising amount of marketing hype around the CCM RBZ. Now, the standard insole that you'll get with the skate is this pretty plain Jane insole that I have right here in my hands. It's got a mesh liner on top, some perforations in the forefoot, and it's just one extremely thin layer of this red foam. Nothing fancy by any means, but it does get the job done for the most part. Now, if you pick up these skates through the link provided in the description of this video, they offer a free pair of CCM custom support insoles that you can pick in either low, medium, or high arch types for pretty much all the sizes available. Now, again, this is more of a marketing thing from CCM, and I have tried these skates with various other insoles. I don't have the custom support insoles with these skates, so I can't really tell you too much about them. But what I was getting at here is I've tried all kinds of different custom support insoles for hockey skates, soccer shoes, running shoes, whatever it may be, and honestly they all feel very, very similar to each other. There is some scientific evidence that having that little bit of extra arch support is better for your foot. It's better for being more anatomically correct and aligning your body and stuff like that. But honestly, doesn't make that big of a difference at the end of the day when it comes to performance. That's something you have to decide for yourself. I'm not entirely convinced. Of course, it is nice to get some custom insoles for free. That would normally be between $40 and $50 depending on where you live. But is a pair of insoles reason to spend $750 on a pair of skates? The answer to that question, in my opinion, is absolutely not. But again, it is nice that you do get something better than this stock insole that honestly is pretty pitiful for a pair of $750 skates. Next, I want to talk about the holders and runners of the CCM RBZ skates, as it is one of the most unique features of the skate itself. Now, as far as the holders themselves go, this is the Speedblade Plus 4.0 holder, and its claim to fame is that it is 4 millimeters higher than a standard holder would be. Now, the reasoning for the 4 millimeter height increase is that it increases your turning radius, allowing you to lean harder when making your turns. And because it's 4 millimeters higher, you can turn that much lower because the boot's not going to touch the ice because you have that extra increase in height in the holder itself. Now 4 millimeters is technically not a lot, but it does make a noticeable difference in terms of how these skates feel. It's not something that you can put on, step on the ice and feel completely comfortable with. It honestly took me some getting used to, and I would say that I'm not even yet 100% used to the overall feel of the skates themselves just because of that 4 millimeter height increase. It does change things up, but honestly, if you do turn really hard, there is a noticeable amount of extra height that you can actually lean a little bit harder, more confidently, I would say, just because you do have that slight bit of extra height in the holder itself. As far as other features that they talk about in the holder, you do have the speed rib technology here going on the sides. You can see there's some very slight ridging. Again, would I call this a feature? Not necessarily. It's designed to increase the overall rigidity of the holder itself, not allowing it to flex or move on you when you're putting a lot of force and stress on it. That is just something that's expected from any pair of holders, regardless of if it has ribbing or not. So again, I wouldn't take that really too much as a feature, more or less just something that comes along with the holder just because it needs that for the sake of structural integrity. Visually, I like the look of the holder. It's not too out there, but at the same time, it does have a fairly modern appeal about it. And then moving on to the runners itself, this is, again, a fairly unique feature to the CCM RBZ. First off, the steel itself is supposed to be slightly harder than a standard runner would be, and the reasoning for that is quite simple. It's supposed to hold its edge a little bit longer because it's a harder steel. Did I find that was the case? Not really. I felt like they dulled out just as fast as any other pair of runners would. So for the most part, again, more or less an insignificant feature. Now it is what they call the Speedblade Hyperglide runner. The Hyperglide aspect of this blade is of course the polished finish. It has like a chrome-like aesthetic to it, which I thought was very, very interesting and pretty intriguing about this particular skate. The logic here is that the polished finish on the runner itself will allow the blade to glide more smoothly and more efficiently on the ice. A better glide equals more speed, less fatigue, whatever kind of marketing words you want to throw out there. Now, in all honesty, I didn't notice any difference whatsoever when it comes to just straight up glide on the ice. They feel like pretty much any other pair of runners that I've honestly ever used. And honestly, the first thing that I thought of when I saw this kind of chrome-like polished finish on the runner itself is how is that going to stay on the blade once I start getting these things sharpened. Now obviously on the bottom, once you sharpen them, that finish is gone altogether, and that's something that people have to realize here. This is simply a finish on the outside of the blade. Every time you get them sharpened and they stone the skates, or even if you stone them yourself, it starts to rub off some of that shiny polished finish. So this is something that it's going to be a feature when the skates are brand new, but let's say 8 to 12 sharpenings down the line, it's very unlikely that you're going to have any chrome finish left on your steel at all. So just keep that in mind. Again, it's more of a marketing thing rather than something that's actually going to be beneficial to your performance. And it's also something that's not going to stick around for all that long because at the end of the day, it's just a finish on the steel. It's eventually going to rub off. One thing that I did notice regarding the shiny finish is that snow actually stuck to it a little bit more than a normal matte finish steel would. So I'm not sure why that is, and I'm not sure if that more or less kind of cancels out the whole glide theory because it was actually sticking to the blade rather than sliding off it. But again, just something that I noticed kind of when I was coming off the ice and cleaning off the blade. The snow just seemed to stick to this shiny finish. So other than that though, that's pretty much it as far as the holders and runners go. It definitely does have a unique feel on this particular skate, different from anything else that I've personally ever worn, but just keep in mind that it does take some getting used to. It's not something you're going to be comfortable with right off the bat. Next, I want to give my general first impression of the skate itself. Now, one thing that I absolutely must stress with the CCM RBZ is that you have to get these things baked. It's always a good idea to get new skates baked, but these in particular just won't feel right until you've baked them. Once you bake them, put them on your feet, tie them up, the boot almost instantly changes shape, contours your foot around the ankle area especially. It makes for a truly comfortable feel. Like I mentioned earlier, it's one of the first skates ever that I went on the ice for the first time and really had pretty much no issues with discomfort whatsoever, which is pretty unusual for a pair of high-end skates as stiff as these. Now, as far as stiffness goes, I didn't really have too many issues as far as forward flex goes. I found that from the first couple times I skated on them, I just decided not to use that top lace hole just because they felt relatively rigid when it came to flexing forward. But after, like I said, 4 to 6 hours of time, I felt comfortable wearing that top lace hole again, and almost find that the top lace hole is necessary in order to achieve enough stability out of this particular boot. And that has to do with the slightly lower than average cut, at least from my experience, in comparison to something like a Bauer skate from the CCM RBZ, and also due to the abrupt ending of the padding on the liner closer up towards the top of the ankle collar area. You're going to find that on the high ankle / low leg area of the boot itself, there's very, very minimal padding, as you can see. And because of that, there's a little bit of extra gap that you just can't get rid of, even when you tie them all the way to the top and even when you tie them really tight on the CCM RBZ. It doesn't necessarily take away from the stability of the boot, but it does make for a little bit of extra play around the ankle area. So when you do lean in, there's that added kind of requirement of actual ankle strength as opposed to just having the boot kind of do all the work for you. Again, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's something that you just kind of have to get used to. It's part of wearing a brand new pair of skates, but definitely something worth noting regarding the CCM RBZ that I noticed almost right away, and is why I would say that you absolutely have to wear that top lace hole in order to achieve the proper amount of stability out of this particular boot. Now, another aspect is this definitely worth talking about is the holder and runner combo. It definitely is a noticeable feature with the RBZ, and it definitely does take some getting used to. It's not for everybody, but what I like about this particular innovation is that it actually is an innovation. Having that extra 4 millimeters of height actually will make a difference when it comes to increasing your turning radius. I'm not somebody who leans into their turns that low that often during in-game situations anyways. So for the most part, I didn't find this particular feature to be all that useful for myself personally. But if you're one of those people that finds that you're on your edges a lot, turning really hard, making hard cuts and stuff like that, you really will find that extra 4 millimeters of height pretty useful, and it is something that you can get exclusively only from the CCM RBZ skates. Other than that though, guys, again, just a very, very comfortable boot, which I can't complain about. There's plenty of lateral stiffness and support from the ankle area of the boot. There's lots of stiffness there, no complaints whatsoever. Again, it's just a matter of getting used to that extra 4 millimeters of height in the holder, as well as just the general feel of the boot itself. Alright guys, that's it for my first impressions and overview video of the CCM RBZ skates. If you guys are interested in purchasing a pair of these for yourself, there will be a direct link in the description, along with an exclusive HR4U7 coupon code, allowing you to pick these up below the $750 retail price. I will be following up with my full review, hopefully within the next month or so. I want to get some more wear time on these before I give any kind of final thoughts. But other than that, if you have any questions regarding the skates or any suggestions for products you'd like to see featured on my channel, be sure to leave a comment down below. I definitely am always open to hearing your input. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to support it with a like. Subscribe if you haven't already for more videos on all the latest and greatest hockey gear. Other than that, guys, hope you enjoyed today's video, and as always, thanks for watching.